I think I was in 7th grade. And at the end, they to raise money for charity, they invite some of the younger kids down. And I'll never forget, I bench pressed 115 pounds. And the coach spotted me. And to me, in a small town, he's like a god, right? Like the high school kids were benching over 200, and that seemed impossibly strong to me.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know anything. I was sure all the starters on varsity in Louisiana was ever going to go pro. You know what I mean? I couldn't understand why they didn't. And so I benched that 115 pounds, and I got up, and I didn't know how. And he slapped me on the back and said, "You're pretty strong." And it like clicked. I'm like, I'm pretty strong.
Mm-hmm.
And it changed my trajectory from then on. In my mind, I was strong. I could do it. I didn't have any limits. And I became, in my mind, strong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to start acting like a strong guy. And so it's just a reminder of like how important words are. Small phrases that he probably forgot long ago, good and bad. It can either set a kid on the right path I carry that forward with me in my coaching community or in my coaching career, so that I was always very aware, cognitive of the words that came out of my mouth to individual athletes.
Mm-hmm.
You could be tough on them, and he was tough, and you can criticize them and this and that, but don't say anything, let anything come out of your mouth that's gonna make the kid not want to believe in himself.
Mm-hmm.
And then your job is to show this kid that you believe in him and that he should believe in himself. And that's what my head coach was always really good at. He gave me, there's a special number that all the best players wore,
Right.
54, like the all state linebackers that they'd had there. And he gave that number to me my sophomore year after I'd earned it my freshman year. Called me in the coach's office, and he explained the history of that number, explained who wore it, explained how much of an honor it was, and then I had to live up to it.
Right.
So it's small things, one-on-one interactions to let kids know the history, the lineage, and the expectations of you.
Mm-hmm. I like that. That's a very transformational coach versus a lot of transactional, especially at the high school level. They're
Exactly.
trying to hold on to their job. So
Exactly.
it's tough.
And then in college, the coaches did a really good job of, telling me like, hey, I was a little raw, as could be expected, but they saw potential, and the coach that recruited me said he expected me to be an all-conference player for them one day. And in my mind, he set the expectation. So knowing when I was on that field with these kids from other schools, I know he didn't tell every kid that, and it gave me the confidence. Well, if the coach thinks this is in me, then it helps me with that confidence, but also it gives me something, once again, that I have to live up to. If the coach expects me to be all conference, I'm going to start acting like an all conference.
Mm-hmm.
So I would start looking at the other former returning all conference players. How do they act? How do they eat? How do they train? How do they communicate with their teammates? Because that's what coach thinks I'm going to be. That's what I need to start learning how to be.
Observation, that's a skill. So where do you feel observing came into play? Because most people, they just take the words and they don't have that social awareness, right? It's difficult to even teach teenagers and college athletes self-awareness, but you have self-awareness and a level up to now seeing the team around you.
That's a tough one to answer, man. I would just say if you don't have it, it's going to be very hard to be successful in life. And I see it all over. We were in foreign countries, and when I was in the Army, and me and some other guys have completely different experiences and see the same things.
Yeah.
They would see people that are beneath them that live like animals. I would see people that are struggling, doing the best they can, trying to put myself in their place. What would I be like if I was raised in that environment?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, and everyone wants to be this fitness star or influencer or whatever. And I'm like, unless you spend a lot of time thinking before you're talking and wondering and listening to other people and being interested in other people, like truly interested, you're going to not be a very good influencer, because you're not going to have anything to say to people other than your own experience from your own point of view, And so our experience, our abilities to experience things are quite limited. So we have to wonder, be curious, we have to research, and we have to be able to put ourselves in positions that we're not in with a clear mind, so that we don't have to directly experience those things in order to learn from those things.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I don't know how to tell somebody to get it sometimes, but if you don't have it, you should develop it.
That the older we get, the more difficult it is to develop self-awareness.
Yeah.
Which is wild. So then a big part of this podcast is communicating to adults and leaders on how to get younger generations the opportunity to develop that. So
I always tell my kids, because I went through it too. I call it my quarter life crisis. It's like my mid to late 20s when I realized I didn't fucking know everything. Because, you take a couple to the chin, you fail a couple times, you maybe get fired or demoted or, chastised by a boss. If you're smart, you'll start hearing stuff that you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a hard transition for people, and they lose a lot of the cockiness, but then they start to grow the confidence. And it's a necessary transition. So the coaches, that anybody listening to this around that age or has children that age, if they're going through that, just say, hey, this is a good period. This is a period of growth.
Mm-hmm.
These are lessons learned, and you're just now truly starting to grow into a man. And that takes decades.
Yeah.
And I'm still very much in my growth process, right?
Hopefully forever, right?
Yeah.
To connect some science to the words and what you said earlier, like it's important for coaches to, like, they're in a leadership role. They see a kid who's got the potential. They break them, whether through training or film or a game, and then they put them in a position to show them what the correct thing is to do versus just pile on and break them down. So the important words, and then this is called neuro-linguistic programming, very famous science-based term, but creating this opportunity, and then almost like a mantra or a affirmation that you are strong. So then you break them down, but you also give them the tools to build them back up. So when somebody else breaks them down, the tools are in place versus continuing this cycle to drag them down.
Yeah, and I would always say focus on their behavior, not their internal or inherent characteristics, because that is something that, if they're not positive, if you see some inherent characteristics of a kid that are positive, and highlight to them and let them know they have a responsibility to make the most of those.